Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here.
It's Neil here.
Hello.
As you can see, we're in the car. We're on our way to London to do something very exciting indeed. What are we doing, Daniel?
We're going to have a chat with Neil Finn.
Fair to say, Dan, your songwriting, guitar playing, musical hero?
Of all time.
There we
I
are.
cannot believe it.
Of Neil Finn fame, of Split Enz fame, of Crowded House fame, and of course, currently, or at least just having played with Fleetwood Mac.
Indeed.
We're going to the Roundhouse, we'll do a rig tour, maybe we'll have a chat with Liam as well. You can see all of that in the rest of the video. But at this point, Dan, I think you may have a more pertinent question.
I do have a pertinent question. Are we doing Stonehenge?
No, we're not doing Stonehenge!
Look at Stonehenge!
It's Stonehenge!
It's actually Stonehenge!
It's Stonehenge!
You see the Triffids? They're 20 feet high.
What were they doing?
What were they doing? So we are here with Marcus Catanzaro, and we're going to take, Marcus is the tech for Neil. He's also stepped in as tour manager for the moment as well. He's a busy boy, but yeah, we just get a quick run through of the rig. That would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So on this show, we kind of scaled back a little bit. We'd come from Fleetwood Mac world, which, you know, was astronomically huge, you know, isolation cabs off stage and Voxes and Bassmans and all sorts of different amp combinations. So this show we scaled back. We're going from our input cable here straight into the switcher, which just means that we have one input cable for acoustic or any of the electrics.
Okay.
Which simplifies things for Neil and for me.
So there's no wireless for Neil?
No, we scrapped it on this tour, which is nice. So this switcher basically is just operated by me during the show. You'll see when I run on that I will go between acoustic and electric. From there, it either feeds our loom that goes straight out into the rack, which I'm sure we'll get to later on, or it comes straight through into this wah pedal, the Morley, and then out of the Morley into this pedal board, which is powered by none other than your own babies here. Yeah. So it basically, it comes in, the tuner and the mute pedal that you see there are separate. They run out of the rack, and that actually allows for me to give Neil a master mute because we use that one cable. So that's a master mute and an always on tuner. So the input actually goes into a little lever in the back into this exotic boost, which I use for the Gretsch. And I know you guys have used them a bunch. It just gives this like ultimate sparkle to the tone that, you know, without it, it's not like it's bad, but it's lacking.
Sure.
And the second you turn it on, it's got this pristine cleanness to it. From there, it goes into one of the original hotcakes.
That is one of the first ones, right?
That is one of the first ones. It's the beloved, yeah. Tarnish on it.
Amazing.
It's a work of art. So from the hotcake, we then go into the Mud Honey, which is an interesting choice of pedal. I think that every time I've ever talked about Neil's rig or we talk about gear, people are always surprised to see a T-Rex Mud Honey on the board. It's also an incredibly difficult pedal to replace because they've changed the way they make them.
Yes.
So I have a very hard time parting with that guy. But it's what Neil knows and loves. It's dual channel. They're both pretty similar voiced. And he just loves it. I can't get it off the board. And it's the one he chooses every time. I did, interestingly, put this virtual battery that you guys make before it on this tour for the first time. And tonally, it improved exponentially.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Power is everything, and we do bang on about that, but it's, yeah,
It is
important to get
everything.
that right.
And, you know, as techs, we're constantly kind of trying to improve and look at the situation that we built and you know, what could affect tone or sound or noise or any of those things. And I didn't expect the 9-volt virtual battery to make such a big difference to the top end of that pedal.
Wow.
All that kind of harsh frequency that you get from it was rolled off. So that's an interesting little tidbit for you. Out of the Mud Honey, we go into this freeze pedal, which I'm going to go ahead and say that Neil Finn is the master of, out of anyone in the world. I could stand here all day and play with that pedal, and it never, ever sounds the way that Neil uses it.
Wow.
He just has this innate ability to use it, and it sounds like 3 guitar players.
Wow.
So he loves that. Out of that, we go into some really simple leela switches here. And all these are feeding of these memory mans, which is very classic Nilfin delay. But as you guys know, they just tend to break. They're not overly roadworthy. They're quite hard to repair. Every time we've sent them to a rogue repairman, they've come back completely different.
Wow.
So now we run them on these little leelas. This one's kind of set up almost as like quite a heavy chorus sound,
Okay.
which you'll hear during the show quite a lot. And then this one is set up for that really classic "Don't Dream, It's Over" slapback.
Right.
Like the second you hear that first, E flat chord,
Yep.
you know what that pedal is, what the sound is. It's all together.
Amazing.
From there, we go into this DD3, which, I think we've tried a couple of different delays before.
That's an Analog Man modded one.
Yeah, so that's when we discussed on the phone. This is the mod that I made. Neil loves the DD3. He loves the simplicity of it. I don't think it's even a tonal thing. It's the simplicity of the layout and the way that it works. He loves to grab and mod his delay as, I guess, like a rhythmic type of process. And he was always down, during the first few legs of the Fleetwood Mac tour, he was always down on his knees and, leaning over. And so myself and Mike from Analog Man modded it to this little bad boy up here. And basically, all this is controlling is the time pot on the DD3.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So Neil has it to maximum repeats. He turns it on, he'll play a note, play a chord, and I'm sure you'll probably hear him play later on. He'll grab it and very rhythmically take it down or up an octave or to some other obscure place and kind of play along with it. And it's super cool. And it looks cool. It's kind of like, I love seeing like players down on their knees with pedal boards and stuff, but for the average punter in an arena show, they're so low that they don't really know what's going on. Right. So for me, this was like a theatrical kind of way to solve a problem. And it's awesome watching him use it. So everything out of there comes all the way over to our racks.
Okay.
Is that a logical place to go to next?
Of course.
Probably not enough light for you guys.
Oh, enough light for that. Check that out. Oh, man.
So from my loom, we come into the back of here,
Right.
into these radial switches, which are seemingly probably a little underutilized on this tour. Previously on Fleetwood Mac, when we had wireless, we would utilize these channels a little bit more. Everything was always on and I would select before a change. So now basically from that little leela split, the very first pedal we talked about, the loom runs into separate channels. So there's a bailout cable, which is for an emergency, 100-foot cable that I can run out if something was to happen, and it bypasses the board. Electric 2 will be the general electric sound, which in our case generally is the Gretsch, which you'll see later on. And then the Les Paul we have on a separate channel. It's quite a lot hotter, so we actually take the trim pot down.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of rolling off the volume essentially. 4 is not utilized on this tour. 5 is the only or the first acoustic channel with a built-in DI. And the other thing about this is that it routes our amps out. On Fleetwood Mac, we had 6 amps running at all times, which is insane and awesome. On this, we only have 2. So we've got a magnetone and a matchless, and they're both always on, running in dual mono, and this does all our routing for us. It isolates some Jensen transformers and all sorts of things. So it's kind of just our little Swiss Army knife, I guess. Out of there, the whole rig is powered off a UPS, which I've learnt a couple of times the hard way of, not being on my own power with backup and having venue power issues and having everything go down. So this just is a foolproof way. It gives me about 25 minutes of power if someone was to rip out the power cable on our rack,
Wow.
which is amazing. And it's prioritized, so I can tell it what to kill first. So I know that when my LEDs go off in the rack that I only have 10 minutes left of power,
Right.
which is great. So as a visual reminder, if I'm standing down there in the wings, I can see that we have an issue before it becomes an issue, which sounds kind of like not a big deal, but it's actually a giant lifesaver. So we come out of these amps, out of these switches. One is this really cool DC30 rack mount, which I personally had never seen in my life.
No.
I know that Phil made this very early on in the C30s. It's pretty much a standard C30. They've changed a little bit now in modern day, he said, but sounds incredible. It's wired for 110 power. And I love that it lives over here in our rack. It's
So cool.
the ultimate kind of way to transport it, keep it safe. Then on stage we run a magnetone, and here is just a spare head on top. It's always wired in case something happens. And here we have our pride and joy. So this is a new thing for us, actually. In the past, we've used everything from, on Fleetwood Mac we used one of Tom Petty's AC30s, one of Mike Campbell's Fender Princetons,
Yes, you did.
like the most ridiculous, beautiful array of amps, and then an original 59 Bassman in combination, everything running all at the same time, and it was glorious. On stage, Neil would have a GA50 Gibson and the Princeton, which gave him this really nice cut on stage, and then off stage in isolation cabs, we could run the bigger amps and run them quite significantly hotter. But for a tour like this, where we're in arenas one day and we're in slightly smaller rooms another day, like here in London, we needed a little bit more flexibility. So that's where we got to this new configuration. This is just a 112 speaker made by a tech in America, Drew Fopp. It's a Fopstar amp, which is great. Strangely, that matchless, when you run it as a 212, it blows out a little bit, and tonally, like last tour, something was missing and I couldn't quite pinpoint it. And then changing it to a 112, which is a creamback, it's like a different amp, like an entirely different amp. And I know that people who really are into guitars will mess with speakers and speaker combinations, but my God, the difference a 112 makes for me is everything. It holds together, it gives you the frequencies you need without blowing out. It takes enough of the stage equation into it, So we started using that, and then the Magnetone is just a work of art. It's this insane amp that if you haven't played any of the new Magnetones, you really should. Ted from Magnetone, when we stumbled upon them, it was Liam actually who first started playing Magnetones, and I needed to go test a few and find one for Neil. I was so impressed with what Liam was doing. And Ted from Magnetone sent me to a place in LA, and I sat in front of them. And I recall calling within 5 minutes being like, how do I get this amp right now? And they have huge delays like everything in the world right now, shipping delays and manufacturing delays. So I actually ended up stealing a higher loan stock from a place in LA and flying it on the plane to the Australian tour with me to join our rig. And now it's the shit. It's the Neil Finn tone. And I guess we never knew or, hadn't found it. I guess the big points of difference, it is a stereo amp, which is wonderful. Like it's got an onboard tremolo, which is like creamy and delightful, and then a vibrato as well. And so when you switch both of those on, it goes into stereo mode, similar to a Roland JC120. It goes left and right, and it is so thick and warm. The other big thing that I realize now, which I guess it's taken some time to get to, is that the 10-inch speakers, I think, is what Neil needs to hear on stage. They hold together and they cut above everything else. Right. And that would make sense because his favorite amps are all the small Fenders, the Princetons and the Pro Juniors and things like that. So the fact that the Magnetone is two 10-inch speakers is perfection. For him, when he stands right at this spot here, it is just like the 112, slightly kind of lower volume, and then the 210s, everything seems to click. So yeah, these Magnetones are incredible. You can run extension cabs. Ted from Magnetone himself suggested running a 112 on either side of the Magnetone. So you've got two outputs, and if you run both outputs, they also go to stereo. Oh, okay. So the tremolo will go hard left, hard right on all amps, on all speakers. So this is a new addition to us, and truly a very welcome one that I don't think will be going anywhere.
Amazing.
Which is cool. Cool. So we are now in front of Liam's board that I originally built, and our amazing tech, Aiden, takes care of and modifies, and is a bit of a mad scientist with Liam over. Liam's rig simplified, similar to Neil's. It previously used to go through a rack and through a switching system, which on this tour we've tried to really cut back on, I guess, unnecessary stages. Liam very much is a tone purist, and I know that possibly that seems somewhat funny because there's so many pedals without a true bypass strip and stuff like that. But it's the way he's always played. He just truly knows how his guitar will be represented through this many pedals, through this type of pedals. And he knows, like, if something else is back there in line, he can tell that the response to the guitar is different. So Aidan and Liam have gotten to this point now with this pedal board where it's pretty much a direct in. It's very simple. Goes to the tuner, to the exotic, which is Liam uses as like a solo boost. The ZVEX fuzz, which is the greatest pedal for fuzz ever. And then from there we go into the Boss, and then into the other Boss, and the Prunes and Custard, and the double hotcake, which I believe that Liam invented with Crowther.
Oh, really?
Yes, he and Crowther were sitting down one time, and Liam said, I always have to run 2 hotcakes on my pedal board. It would be great if you made a double, hence the double hotcake.
Amazing.
I'm so sorry if that story is not true or if I made it up, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So from there we go into the Earthquake and Nightwire. Earthquake is pretty new. The last 2 years we got in contact with them and they sent a bunch of pedals to Liam. And Liam, which you guys will soon experience, is a total master of pedals. I don't know what you guys are like, but when I plug in Earthquaker pedals, I really struggle for the first 4 hours to understand what they do until you find that thing. Liam seems to be able to take them out of the box and you're like, what, how did you, what is this preset, So he's really loving the Earthquaker pedals. Again, under the hood, entirely powered by Gig Rig, which I'm not sucking up right now, but truly has been a game changer for us, especially on Liam's board, with so many different power types, going to different countries, being in different power conditions, adding pedals on the fly, the little voltage doublers and the Time Lords and all that kind of stuff has seriously changed teching for Aiden and I.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I'm being very genuine about that. Like it really, I use them with Steely Dan as well, and everyone that I tech for, I end up incorporating this system, and it really is a lifesaver. So I guess thank you guys.
Boy,
Thank
oh
you.
boy.
So from here,
Hang on, I'm just going to go and sit down for a bit.
yeah, he's not even coming to the show anymore. Peace out. From here, we go to a little Goodwood audition box. Australia represent.
Nice.
Another Australian brand. And then we come out into this little kind of world of delays. It's purely a junction box that Aiden's built. And then again, the memory mens. I think we have a very hard time getting past memory mens, to be honest, if you can't tell. Nothing sounds like them.
They just don't.
We do actually, funnily enough, on the Fleetwood Mac tour, we did tour with one of Shane from Echo Fix's delays, which I know I've seen that you guys have tried and we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
And in Neil's Fleetwood rack, we had it mounted in there, and we actually did use it all the time. We used the preamp a lot and then used the delay in conjunction with memory mens. And then another little Australian spruik is the Bondi Effects Sick
The
As.
Sick As, yeah, man. These are fantastic.
Stealth paint job.
So great, yeah. I asked for all black because Neil wasn't super keen on the fluoro blue. So he did us some custom ones. We've got 4 or 5 of them now. And actually, funnily enough, like his Art Van delay is probably the only thing, we have 4 or 5 of them. If a memory man goes down, that's the only thing we can put on the board to replace them,
Oh, wow.
interestingly.
Amazing.
I think the bucket style delay and the general build of it, I know they're very different pedals, but tonally they actually represent each other quite well.
Wow.
So that's always our go-to for the spare. Then we come all the way back through this wacky world into another Earthquaker here, which is Avalanche Run.
Yep.
Again, just watch Liam. I'm not even going to bother explaining how he does what he does with it. MXR Carbon Copy, Chase Bliss Dark Worlds,
Yep.
which you guys are a fan of, I'm sure. MXR Phase 100, which is such a classic, phaser sound. And also the Mel and the Synth 9s, which he uses to replicate basically every sound on every Crowded House record that, previously it was either covered by a keys player or wasn't there at all. And between Mitchell and Liam, every sound is covered. Of the most obscure, random instruments that were tracked that one night in 1979, they're there between everything here. So it's quite incredible. From there, he goes out of a little leadless split on the back of the board and into these two amps. One is a Roland JC 120.
So he's doing the stereo thing with the JC120 and the mono thing with the Magnetone.
So he's doing mono for both, actually.
Okay.
He's running dual mono for both, but he kicks on the chorus on the JC, hence pushing it into stereo mode.
Yeah.
So it kind of fluctuates between. We did try like a wet rig with him once. We tried stereo. I don't know why it didn't click with either of the fins. They didn't like the feeling of standing here. The wet, they were kind of weirded out by, and then dual running in stereo, they just felt like they didn't need it. That the dual mono taking everything was kind of the sound that they wanted to represent. And it's really nice flavor for both of these guys, like having the two amps. Kerry, our front of house guy, gets to kind of decide what the venue needs. You know, they tonally represent such different things, and you guys talk about it all the time at gigs. Like you know, our job is to give the front of house guy the best possible tone to build the show, and I think that these 4 amps on stage really cover that.
Is this some kind of rotary?
It's is it cooler if I say yes? No, it's just a Fender bass amp. It's just running from Nick's bass rig over there.
Okay.
So here you go, Neil Finn's main go-tos. There's a ton of Gretches, as you can see. This right here is the, I guess the iconic Neil Finn, 5859 Gretsch Duojet Firebird. It's a work of art, man. I don't know, like I've worked so much with Gretsch during Fleetwood Mac and during, you know, those years as to why this is the guitar.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So interestingly, I took this because it was the number one and I was terrified of what may happen if it wasn't ever around. I took it to Gretsch and we X-rayed it. Myself, Mike Taff from Gretsch and Stephen Cern, and we spent about a week with it measuring, you know, every little nook and cranny of this guitar. And there's some really obscure things. Like I think Gretsch in this era weren't exactly producing the highest quality instruments, and everything is different. So for example, this headstock is significantly thicker than any other Gretsch headstock. Wow. To the point where you can see that most machine heads only just make it through. They're the extra long tuning pegs, and they only just actually make it through enough to get 2 ones on the string. So when we took it, they X-rayed it a bunch, and we ended up with this guy, which is basically a carbon copy.
Oh, wow.
Built by master builder Stephen Stern, down to like the detail. So no one's really sure when this gouge happened, but at some point on the back of the neck there's a gouge, and I asked Neil all the things when he played that he noticed, you know, when he was standing there with it. And he was like, oh, the neck feels like this. And so I felt like it was imperative to put that same kind of feel to it. So the same gouge, same length.
Oh, man.
Because you really do, you know, when you play this number one, you feel it. There's like, it's almost like a marker, right? Like a ledger of where you're at in the neck. So yeah, all the distressing is pretty much the same, bar maybe a few weather checks. But yeah, TV Jones, Tom wound some pickups and matched as close as he possibly could to these originals. And even he, you know, in response to the pickups, he was like, I can't make them identical. There's something happening there that, you know, time has permitted them to sound this way, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we got as close as we possibly could and made this amazing replica, which is cool.
Truly amazing.
It's too cool.
Very cool. We go to our 64 Gretsch Duojet in black, which is also quite an iconic Neil Finn guitar. You know, I think like flavor-wise, it's a little bit hotter.
Right.
And a little bit rounder, I suppose, is the tone. I don't know that Neil overly has preferences to like, you know, I use this because of this. It's almost like a feel thing. There are just certain days where he seems to want to play this more than others. But man, just like another example of like Gretsch in this era, nailing it. These pickups, everything about it is just a work of art. So we have that guy.
Okay.
Then we go to his 70s era Les Pauls, the pancake gold tops.
Oh my word, there it is. Oh,
That's the
wow.
Don't Dream It's Over guitar.
Far out.
To my knowledge, not like a hugely popular era of Les Paul, right?
They really weren't. And I mean, there are a few guys that use the Goldtop version, but obviously they did, you know, there's the standard burst and that sort of stuff. But there are, because they manufacture, the way they manufacture, so it's a two-piece body.
Yeah, that's right, there's a pancake here,
Yeah,
yep.
pancake and stuff. And, you know, I just think a lot of players didn't really connect with them, but that is
A lot of
the...
them were super heavy as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean,
yeah.
this is pretty reasonably heavy.
But for me, like that's, when I think of Neil Finn on the steps of the Opera House,
Yeah.
the farewell concert, and that guitar,
Yep.
man, I just get
Yeah, the
that
mini
gives me
buck
shivers.
is, it's cool and it's really versatile. I mean, you know, rolling this volume back, you really do clean it up pretty quick, which I guess is like, you know, it's worth its weight in gold top, you know, with guitars like this. So he uses this a lot. Actually, during this show, the last 2 legs of this tour, it's been coming out a ton, which is not so common. I'm kind of used to the Gretsch being the star of the show. So we have this guy, and then we have his little brother, because if you have one, you got to have 2 in rock and roll. It's pretty similar, same year. I think a tech long prior to me had found an exact copy for the same reason. It's like, you know, what do you do if you don't have the number 1? But it's got such beautiful tarnishing and weathering. Like, it's got this green patina to it. It's awesome.
How long have you been working with Neil, Marcus?
I'm up to 8 years now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's truly like, you know, I work for so many different people, from, you know, Kendrick Lamar to Childish Gambino and A$AP Rocky and all the modern rappers to Steely Dan and John Harrington, all these incredible players. But something, when I work for Neil Finn, every night it's different. Tonally, creatively, like every single night it is a masterclass. And I'm sounding again like a suck, but it's true as a musician myself, all of us, even our monitor engineers, our front of house engineers, everyone is just constantly blown away at his ability to shape and create a set on the fly. I mean, we're talking about a guy who plays guitar, who sings, who, you know, he's reading a set list, he's telling stories and altering set lists. Like, you know, the last show we did in this very venue, we changed 6 songs on the fly and it changed the room entirely.
Yeah, right.
And he knows that. And I don't know how. He's just a master, truly a master. And there's a reason, I think, why, you know, when people ask Paul McCartney who the best songwriter in the world is, he says Neil Finn. And, you know, it is honestly an honor working for the Finn family. They're ridiculous musicians that blow my mind on a regular basis. From here, we go to acoustics. We have Neil Finn custom shop Matins, made in Australia, made in Victoria. Neil and Maton have had such a long relationship. Mark Mansour, who's head of marketing there, has just always taken care of us. We have 15, I think, of these.
Wow.
We had about 9 out on Fleetwood Mac. Excuse me.
It's a deep body for a stage guitar, isn't it?
It is, but it's also a small body, and the neck's quite small, so it leads to, which you'll hear, quite an interesting tone, quite a confined type tone, which is awesome. So there's 1 and 2 of them, and then a brand new 12-string that we got last week,
Oh, wow.
which the custom shop master builders there at Maton have done such a good job. I asked, previously we had 12 strings by Maton, but they were jumbo bodies.
Okay.
And it's really difficult, I think, for Neil, for the audio crew, for everybody, when you're on in-ears or in wedges, and you pick up such a different guitar that tonally represents such different frequencies, it makes everything quite difficult for the mix.
Sure.
So I asked Maton to create a 12-string that was the same as a 6-string body size and, you know, represents roughly the same kind of, you know, tonality that they did. And they've come up with this, like, insane masterpiece. I mean, the headstock alone is mind-blowing. So yeah, the last 4 shows we've implemented this, and it's been so perfect. So,
Is that
yeah.
flamed colour on the sides?
It is, yep.
Yep.
Look at that.
That's pretty spectacular.
Look at the flame in that.
Look at the flame.
Look at that flame.
What are your key challenges guitar-wise, Marcus?
key challenges, I guess the weather is always the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Everything from freezing cold in North America and parts of Europe to insane temperatures of heat and humidity in Australia, and that just creates such issues for a guitar setup. And I think what we probably spend the most time on each day when I'm not faux tour managing also, and production managing. Yeah, that's probably our biggest issue. Fleetwood Mac is really hard. We spend a long time in North American winter. And guitars in winter just don't feel great. Like they go so tight and so rock solid, and you know the necks feel quite horrible. So handing off a guitar to someone in an arena when it's cold, it just feels horrible. It feels like the top of the show again. So like the biggest challenge for me during the show was to get enough time to tune it, to capo it, but then also to play it and warm that neck up before I hand it over to Neil. Because the second it hits his skin temperature, everything's changed.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it's forever a learning curve. It's stuff that I learnt from so many of my kind of peers out on tour that have done it for 35, 40 years more than I have. And I'm still learning now as to like how to compensate for that. I don't know if there's actually a quick fix answer to give you, but that's definitely a big challenge. And then the rig building, finding tone and trying to understand what the artist needs without hassling them too much or dragging them through the process of testing amps. You know, no one, fatigue-wise on your ear and stuff like that, no one wants to put an artist through that. So, you know, starting a show like Crowded House, like we sit down with records and we listen and we work out how we're going to build those tones, what pedals, what power supplies, everything. Like you guys always say, everything matters. What patch cables are we going to use? How much length are in the looms? You know, you lose so much tonality over length. So what is the minimum we can go, and where is the placement of the rack? Like every little detail at this level really does start making a big difference. So it's all challenging, all of it. But I love it. I really love it, and I'm learning always, and I'm so grateful to have guys like you and your channel and all my peers and stuff to just constantly be pushing the puck with, you know, education, because like every day there is something new. It's digital, or it's you know, a sample of, or it's recreated by, and we just have to keep going and learning. So it's awesome. I never get sick of it.
We are joined today by the one and only Mr. Neil Finn. Still having a bit of a hard time dealing with that. Anyone that watches the show will know that I'm a massive Neil Finn fan. He's a hero of mine. If you don't know who Neil Finn is, first of all, we can't be friends, and you've been living under a rock for the last 40 years. Neil Finn's music has been a part of our lives and on the radio for more than 40 years now. So it's a massive honour for you to do this for us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very kind.
Mate, I wanted to kick off by just asking, Crowded House 2022, I mean, how is it? How does it feel?
It feels magnificent because this lineup, I think, is the most soulful, fulsome group of people that could be in Crowded House, I think, in this age. Everyone has deep connections. Everyone's become amazing musicians through their own experiences, and we all come together with a great love and affection for the whole thing. So it feels like there's great future in it, and as a band, that's always the most exciting thing. It's lovely to be representing the old, but it's wonderful to think that there is massive potential lurking for something new as well.
Yeah, right. So the album Dreamers Are Waiting, which is beautiful, did this come about did you think instantly this is going to be a Crowded House project with the boys?
Yeah, well, we did. It's not always like that, because sometimes it just comes along and you have to decide what it is after a while. But we had decided, when I came off the back of the Fleetwood Mac tour, I had a fresh enthusiasm for classic band stylings and appreciation for it, and I thought it just dropped into my head one day that there is this incredibly good lineup that is deeply connected to the band that would be an amazing way to bring the band back. And not sheepishly, but not sure of the response, I asked Liam and Elroy what they thought of the idea, and they both just went, yeah, okay, sounds great. And Mitchell, same thing. I didn't know whether he would be in the mood to be in a band. We've been asking him for 40 years or something. But and Nick was just completely beside himself at the thought of it. And not just because he was excited about getting Crowded House back, but he's done gigs with Liam and Elroy and Mitchell over the years in various combinations, and it just was one of those ideas. You thought, why didn't we think of that sooner? You know.
Awesome. So you'll all know Neil's songs, of course, and how amazing songwriter and amazing singer he is. But what you may be less aware of is that Neil is an extraordinary guitar player. So we want to get into a bit of that today. It's actually your guitar playing, something that I discovered when I had to learn a lot of your songs for a band I was in Sydney many years ago.
Yeah.
And the way that you come up with parts and arrangements, and how has that been, bringing those songs back?
Well, one of the nice things about this band is that everybody has a great depth of knowledge of the band. And when we get into, like most bands, you get into sort of habits on the road of being a bit approximate with the arrangements, and it's fine. You know, you get away with a lot on a live thing, but there'll be a fill that'll be missing, and only a few people in the audience will go, "Oh, it wasn't right," you know, or harmony that's wrong, or there was a huge enthusiasm to make the arrangements bring back the greatest things about the record. So, and not to make them perfect or overstudied, but there's some big emotional payoffs in some of the details and nuances that occur on records, and I think we've actually managed with this lineup to get most of those on the page and also bring a lot of spirit and tact to it. So I'm always allowing the songs to have moments that are free, and we have endings that will stretch out, and I'm not a slave to my exact parts, but there are key things that I think are important because they do have emotional connections for people, you know, a little bit of filigree here and there.
Yeah. When it comes to, we just cast our mind back a bit, I mean, I've always had the sense that whether you were playing guitar or, because last time I saw you, it was when you were touring with Liam and Elroy and Sharon on bass. You were doing the
Family band.
Family band.
Yeah, it was really fun.
And it was fantastic. And you were playing keys for most of that.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that, you know, whether it's guitar or keys or Hungarian nose flute, songs would come out. Are there like specific songs that you could have only written on guitar?
Yeah, I'd say to the main point, guitar songs, I can tell. Well, I could tell if I didn't know and I was listening to our music, I could tell what I'd been played on guitar and what I'd written on guitar. There's more, inherently you get more rhythm on guitar songs, which is more of a clue to the way that the band might sound. Piano songs are more complicated in the sense that you have to figure out what the feel, you know, sometimes they come with a feel built in, but they come rich in harmonics, and how to fill in the rest of the harmonics is a little more trickier, because there already is quite a bit of space in a piano being filled up, and also how to apply the rhythm to it. So in a way, the piano songs are slightly more difficult to arrange in the main. Guitars, and I'm really enjoying the fact that I play guitar all night at the moment. I'm not playing piano. I could be, and we did on the first tour, but I really love the immediacy of standing up the front, and guitar is much more connected to a live experience for me, you know.
Where is home for you on guitar? What are the sounds that light you up?
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of pedals, and I generally like a clean, bright, and, you know, with a little bit of natural distortion if possible, maybe amp distortion, but I like it because I like to be able to make each note count, and it makes me aware of the dynamic. Oh, you can really get more dynamic light and shade in your playing when you're not putting too many effects on, but and then if I'm going to put effects on, I really want them to count, so I don't want to have a bit of subtle phase or a little bit subtle flange. It'll be like massive amount of delay, or a bit of memory man just for one single repeat, or, you know, hot cake for some distortion, and then just signal boosts so that I can actually really make things heard when they need to be heard.
Okay.
I don't have many, so this will take Liam a lot longer than it will me, because he's got all sorts of stuff. So, mute pedal, single most important thing, and I have forgotten to unmute it for the first note of a concert on a few occasions, so Marcus is always quite nervous about the opening note. So, absolutely nothing on there at the moment, just coming through a really lovely new amp that I have, a Magnetone, which Marcus they sort of almost built for me really, but they are making those now, aren't they? Yeah. and it's just a really nice, bright, clean tone. This Gretsch is, I play this and the Goldtop almost all night. That's almost all I do.
And that's the Gretsch, right? That's your.
It's the one that I have played for many years. I've got a couple of them, and Gretsch have been kind enough to give us a good deal on a couple of new ones that are the spares, but they all sound pretty good. This one is absolutely a joy to play. I have a black Duo Jet, which is also was a birthday present from my wife Sharon, and yeah, they just have they have belly kind of tone, and they can rock when you need them to. But I like that, and I can play them with my fingers, and they sound like a. It's got really good clarity in it.
Yeah.
And so, two memory man, one of them just does a simple single delay, which I use quite a bit for like getting the chorus to sound a bit bigger and broader and whatnot. And this one's just for something wacky. I think in the song Locked Out, there's one section I use. I don't use it that much. Just have it all wound up quite a lot so that it's a bit of, you know, yeah, a wacky element. The freeze pedal I don't use that much on stage, but it is an amazing pedal. You know, it just means you can play along with yourself, really. I can have a keyboard player under my foot. It's a really fun pedal, that one. This is just a boost. Doesn't really do a huge amount to the sound. I mean, it's a tiny bit more distorted, but it's basically just a boost. Sure. So if something needs to, and then the hotcake is. So it's.
So the hotcake, it's a Paul Crowther, a drummer in Stonehenge.
Paul Crowther, yeah.
Yeah, who was, and that's like one of the first hotcakes.
That's a pretty early one, that one, yeah. I think he would never agree with me, but I think his early ones just have a slightly better sound. But the later ones are good too. He refuses to accept or admit that there'd be any difference, but. Or maybe it's just because it's old, and maybe it's worn itself in. There's a bit of sweat in it or something in it. And then the only other thing I have is this digital delay, and I just have it permanently set on a almost endless delay. Which is, you know, just used for psychedelic endings. And then I've made an agreement with Elroy that, I mean, I could just, when I switch it off, it can be slightly disappointing suddenly, you know, leaving the transcendental state. So I've got an agreement with Elroy that if he sees me doing it, he has to hit a little cymbal. Oh, okay. So he's going like, you know, I'm going. It's the end of a song, and Elroy's, you know, just makes it feel like it's not disappointing anybody. So that's about it for me, really. I can't really deal with any more than that because I'm singing all night. So keeping my setup simple seems incredibly important. And
what's the difference between this setup and what you're using in Fleetwood Mac?
Almost nothing. I think I was using almost the same setup. I didn't have a wah-wah pedal. I actually have barely used it, but I probably will. There'll be a night coming up when we'll be jamming a bit, and I'll definitely get back into it. I'm a bit slow with pedals, and Marcus will attest to the fact that I'm 3/4 of the way through rehearsal before I bothered getting my speed set for my delays. I just kind of, sometimes it means that you get nice accidents happen, you switch on, it's the wrong delay speed, but you've got a nice triplet delay or something going on a song you didn't expect to have, so.
Could we have a listen to the Goldtop? Would that be okay?
You know, it's just got a bit more of a beefy.
So this is such an iconic guitar. Like for me, it's, you know, I remember seeing you on the steps of the Sydney Opera House, and you know, with this guitar, and you know, I've just seen you use this quite a lot. And the Don't Dream It's Over.
Well, it's the Don't Dream It's Over guitar, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's been with me for so long, I
Yeah,
can
right.
barely remember not having it.
Yeah,
But
amazing.
before that, I got the Gretsch quite a bit later, so it's yeah, but that's the
sound.
yeah, that's the sound. But yeah, I don't remember. It was weird, isn't it? It had an unfortunate fall many years ago now, but it actually on stage fell on it, and then the neck broke,
Oh wow.
which was incredibly upsetting. But it's been fixed really well, so it's got a bit of a story to tell. Yeah,
Mate, thank you so much for doing this.
you're welcome.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
really appreciate it. It's really special.
You'll get some more quite intricate, mysterious things from Liam, and I don't know what half his shit does, but you know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Liam Finn. Mate, thank you so much for doing this. So you are now in Crowded House. I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty surreal, but it's been a kind of natural progression from playing, well, you know, I've played in touring Crowded House on and off for since they first got back together.
Right.
And obviously made a lot of music with my father over the years, so it sort of just, somehow made sense when he first brought it up. And
Well, we last saw you when you were touring with the family band, and you guys came over. And it was, I don't know, there's something about seeing all you guys together that was really emotional.
Yeah, it was pretty special for us,
awesome.
you know, to look over the stage and to see Mum and my brother Al and Dad. Yeah, I mean, that was the first time we realised that we could do it, just the four of us. We'd always had a few more friends that felt like family, but, you know, adding a few more elements in. But actually the purest it ever got was with just the four of us. Well, in the past, years ago when I was playing, I was relegated to just playing acoustic guitar, which was kind of a bit dull.
Right.
But, I mean, it was fun, and doing a lot of the harmonies. And now I've graduated up to lead guitar all of a sudden. And yeah, I mean, when we stepped into this, especially, I mean, with the new stuff, there was a lot of discovery in the studio, and I'm able to replicate that easily because that's my recent pedal setup just on record. But we kind of both me and Elroy went into this kind of thinking it'd be really nice to hear some of the actual, nuances of those old records that in a way I'd never heard Crowded House do, because they were a organic band that just kept progressing, and they played the songs the way however they played it at that point of their evolution, whereas us joining, we were like, certain lines and songs I'd never heard played live, and so I was like,
Pull those out.
yeah, and actually just find out some of like how to get some of the tones that may have been a bit, through the late mid-90s, they were like, those 80s tones are probably a bit cringy or something, but now I'm like, no, I've got the JC 120 back out and the stereo chorus and all that kind of stuff. And I'm having a lot of fun just working out how to get those old tones, because they're actually, some of those on the first record, there's some really wild, bright and super hyped up guitar tones
It
in there.
really is, yeah. So if you take us through a few sounds that you're using.
Yeah, so this is the biggest pedal board I've ever had. But
marvelous.
it's gorgeous, and my, our crew, Marcus and Aidan, have done an amazing job constructing this thing. It's much more tidy than I've ever had in my life. But I mean, with so many pedals, funnily enough, the majority of what I'm doing is probably either just clean into the amp, and I've just got so many because of this idea of trying to recreate certain things. But obviously the main ones I'm probably using are just the Memory Man, not unlike my dad over there, because that's just the good go-to delay, and it just warms up every sound you've got. But I don't know, let's start over here. I mean, I've got a good old phaser this is the end of my chain, and I put the phaser at the end there just so that's kind of the last step. If it needs to just go that little bit more psychedelic, we can phase the whole thing.
Nice.
But I actually only use it really subtly on Weather With You,
Oh, okay.
and I don't think anyone would probably naturally think that Weather With You sound has a phaser on it. When I listened to the record, I was like, that's phasing.
It is. I mean, I hear it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
I've
it's
always
very
played it with a bit of phaser on it.
Right, well, there we go.
Yeah.
What I've noticed in a lot of the early Crowded House records is there's guitar and piano, or guitar at doubling lines, and that's where sometimes there's this unattainable size that you can't really get from just a guitar sound, or you can try. So this Dark World one is a new favourite.
Yeah.
These pedals are very pricey, but they're really unique, and this one just gives me a good infinite reverb. Good for a breakdown,
Yeah.
maybe. And then if if everyone's jamming and you can kind of get it'll kind of take over, to be honest. And then I really like this. I like these Earthquaker device pedals. I particularly like these two in a combo, because this one's got a great sort of like a wah but tremolo kind of thing. But what I like about it is it's quite random, and you don't have much. You've got control over the wah tone, but not so much the speed. It's an attack. It's especially good with the slide. I'm doing just one song with a slide, and it kind of keeps bubbling away underneath, like in a wall. But with the swell, it's been quite good.
So you love those textures, you love experimenting and getting, things that don't necessarily have to sound like a guitar all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously these two pedals are kings of that. The new electroharmonic stuff's, sound like a mellotron and sound like a synth. But again, they become something that's like used for 10 seconds in a set. But then often I'll start playing a weird solo and a thing, and it won't track all of a sudden, and then quite often when it doesn't track and it goes quite badly, then Mitchell goes, "That was great. How did you do that?" So I'm like, "Yeah, that was all me." This is a great pedal that doesn't get as much sort of notoriety as the old Hotcake. But it's made by Paul Crowther as well.
Yeah.
Have you ever used one of these? Yeah. I mean, they are especially really cool on bass, but they, That's doing the wah. I'm like, that's really over the top. There's more of that sort of distortion harmonic that. I mean, that's not a sound I often get to play in Crowded House, but I do use it quite a bit for like soloing. There's what one is it that I do? It's especially in cahoots with the Hotcake, but it's pretty bright. You sort of can be quite over the top, but it's like, if you need to go to a 11 as such, like on Nails in My Feet. The 12 string for it, but it's got that. It just gives it more of a weird twang.
That's wonderful.
It's my favourite guitar line to play of the night, really, when we do Nails in Your Feet. it's also the one that if you screw it up, everyone knows, and you have to live it down for a few days.
Right.
Good. Oh, here we go. This is 12E. Yeah, it's pretty intense. I mean, I don't distort that, but that's another classic. Like I said, the majority of the time I'm probably trying to keep everything as clean as possible, just because in my head it feels like it makes me have to play better. You can't hide behind the infinite repeats. What else have I got going here? I mean,
The double hot cake. So my understanding is you were having a conversation with Paul Crowther, which led to the double hot cake.
yeah, I actually was happy to have that confirmed by Paul, because I thought after I started seeing them everywhere, I was like, I don't want to be taking credit for something that was already happening. But no, I mean, I actually just had been using 2 hotcakes, and I thought, it'd be really handy just to have it in one box. And then talking to Paul, he was like, and then wouldn't it be cool if you could then, with them both on, have another sort of control, which is, I think, basically your drive of 2 circuits of hotcake all in one. So I'll use the 2 for like feedback and over the top soloing and stuff like that.
Okay, we need to wrap this. Okay,
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I only use this for one song because it goes really nicely with the hotcake for Don't Dream It's Over, which is just for like those long blang, 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 blang kind of things. I mean, I'm not sure if it sounds like it's real milky tone.
Wow.
I mean, it's just something about it when that's on with it. It's just milkier.
That's amazing. Liam, thank you so much for your time, mate. We really appreciate it. That's wonderful. No.